Welcome back. Let us now enter into the Swadhishtana Chakra. This chakra is located 2 inches below the navel. Swadhishtana means where your being is established. Swa means self and Adhishtana means established. This chakra is locked by fear, especially the fear of death. It can be unlocked by acceptance of fear, acceptance of death itself. This chakra is locked by fear. And let us go into that. All our fears are actually fear of death, but under various disguises, that's all. Every single fear of ours is related to the fear of death, but in a convoluted way. Because it is convoluted, we don't see it as a fear of death. Without fear, the word death itself loses the meaning that we have been associating with it. So what is death? If I ask you this question, you will tell me, Swamiji, death is what happens at the end of our lives. If death were nothing more than that, it would be so easy. But death is not something that happens at the end of our lives. It is something which is happening every moment of our lives. Every act of ours is unconsciously related to our death, the fear of dying. Death changes the very quality of our life. It is not the end, it is the climax of our lives, towards which our whole life has been oriented. Why do I say that? Because our whole life is controlled by our concept of death. Even our social structure is guided by our concept of death. All great religions and world philosophies have arisen out of trying to answer this one question: what happens after death? In trying to answer this one question, different life solutions have taken root. The cultures which believe in a single life, with no concept of reincarnation, have poured all their energies into excelling in life. They have achieved the peak in terms of assimilation of information, gaining knowledge, material comforts. These cultures have given rise to science. Science helps us to live life at its optimum. Science helps us to get the maximum out of this life. Whereas the cultures which believe in reincarnation have turned the focus of their life inwards. Their search is different. They are not motivated to live life in a hurry because eternity is granted to them. You can see the play of this concept clearly in the behavior of people. In India, if a program is scheduled to start at 6 o'clock, you can be sure that it won't start before 7:30 because they have eternity before them. Our whole mental setup, the course of our lives, our society, our culture, our religion, everything is based on nothing but our idea of death. We try our best not to think about death, but death pervades every moment of our life. When we understand the depths, the secrets and mystery of death, we understand the secrets of life. We need to solve death and see it as a mere continuity in a different form. Else we will miss life itself. If we understand that death is nothing but continuity in another form, we will not fear death. And when we stop fearing death, we will know to what extent we have been missing life. We take life for granted. We live so superficially. We miss many aspects of life. Is it not? Death will simply teach us to look into life with more awareness. Death is the greatest guru ever. When we want to bring in conviction about something, we can do it in 2 ways. One, we can experiment and see for ourselves what the truth is. Second, we can take reference from someone who has already undergone the experience of it. I will now give you a reference from the Upanishads. There is a Upanishad called Kathopanishad, which is a wonderful release of a personal interview, a direct dialogue that a child had with Lord Yama, the Lord of Death. In Hindu mythology, the presiding deity for death is Lord Yama. He stands for death. There was a famous king by the name of Ucheshravas. He was suddenly possessed by a desire to control the entire world. So he performed a Vajpaya Yaga, a fire offering that is done when one wants to rule the whole world. According to the rules of this offering, one has to give away as offering all the things of great attachment and of great value. Only then one can get the position of the Lord of the world. Kings are always good businessmen. They have to be, otherwise they cannot be kings. And they cannot have control over such vast property. They will see what maximum they can give and what maximum they can get out of it. This king started giving offerings. Cows that were at the fag end of their lives, that had given all the possible milk they could give for a lifetime, that had given birth to as many calves as possible in their lifetime, that were ready to die. These were the kind of cows that he was giving as offerings. He was offering all such worthless things. His son Nachiketha, about 7 years of age, was watching what was happening. Nachiketha is the hero of the story. He knew that his father was not doing the right thing, but he did not know how to tell him. You see, children are very sharp and intelligent. You can't cheat them. Society has not yet corrupted and conditioned them. He was watching his father all the time, and finally he went up to him and said, "Father, you have to give away all your highly prized possessions. I am one of your highly prized possessions. To whom are you going to give me as an offering?" The king understood that his son was digging at him for what he was doing. But his ego didn't allow him to give way. He continued with his worthless offerings. Once more, the boy asked him the same question, and the king kept quiet. The third time, the boy shook him and asked him to whom he was planning to offer him. The king got very angry, and he just blurted out, "I will give you to Lord Yama. You go to Yama." An ordinary boy would have said, "Why should I go? You have lived a full life. You go." But Nachiketha was a very sincere and committed boy. Commitment and honesty possessed him like a ghost. To respect his father's words, he decided to go and meet Lord Yama. Remember, the first and the last person on planet Earth to go and meet Yama was Nachiketha. Normally only Yama comes to meet people, but for the first time, Nachiketha goes to meet Yama. He reached the board of Yama, but Yama was not there. He had gone out. For 3 days, Nachiketha waited. Understand one thing here. A great truth is established at this point of the story. When we go in search of death, or if we have the courage to face death, death will not be there as we know it. Anyhow, Yama returned after 3 days. His servants told him about the young boy who was waiting for him. Yama rushed to see Nachiketha. He apologized to him for not being there to receive him. Then he further told him, "For having made you wait for 3 days, I grant you 3 boons. You may ask for any 3 boons and I will grant them to you." For Nachiketha, death turned out to be a god that granted him boons. He asked for 3 boons. The first boon was, "My father's sins should all be washed away." Yama granted him the boon. The second boon was, my father should accept me when I go back to him after visiting you. This boon was also granted. The third boon was, tell me what happens after death. Some say that man lives after death. Some say that man is not alive after death. What is the truth? Yama was shocked at Nachiketa's question. He told him, please do not ask me this question. You are asking the very secret of death which I cannot deliver to you. If I deliver it to you, you will become enlightened. I will give you immeasurable wealth if you wish, but please don't ask me this question. But Nachiketa was insistent. He said, even if I take all this wealth from you, I will be a mere trustee to your wealth for about 100 years to 1,000 years, that's all. I have to come to you only once that period is over. It is not going to be of any use to me. So please tell me the secret of death instead. Yama saw the maturity and commitment of the boy to know the truth. He decided to offer the boy the conscious experience of death itself. The experience he took the boy through became the experience of the soul for the boy, and Nachiketa flowered and became enlightened. This is a beautiful story from the Upanishad. Don't analyze whether the story is a fact or not. Don't start looking for dates and history. It conveys the truth, and that is enough. Use it as a ladder to reach the truth instead of clinging on to the ladder and missing the truth. Death is the guru that gives enlightenment itself. Normally, in all our lives, death is the only thing that comes on time. We cannot ask for even 1 minute extra. And in our lives, death takes away everything from us, our relatives, our wealth, everything. But for Nachiketa, death gives everything and also enlightenment. Why this partiality? What is the difference between Nachiketa and us? The only reason is, we are all running away from death while Nachiketa faces death. 4 things need to be understood from this wonderful story. The first thing, when we go in search of death, when we face death, it will not be there. Second thing, even if death is there, it is not the terrifying thing that we think it is. It is loving and giving. The third thing, death is our greatest teacher ever. The fourth thing, death is a thing that can give us the ultimate gift, enlightenment. Somehow for most people, life never goes beyond the Swadhishtana Chakra. Life never goes beyond the fear of death. We live and die between the Mooladhara and the Swadhishtana Chakras. Desires and fear. We don't know any other way of life. Or we don't have the courage to take on any other way of life. In earlier times, people lived without the life security that we have today. There was no vaccination available against fatal diseases. There was no advance warning of natural calamities. There was no security against famine or floods. So people were always mentally prepared for struggle, even for death. Especially the warrior class. They had to be ever ready for death. The samurai warriors of ancient Japan knew the way to face death calmly. If they were defeated in battle, they would simply pierce a long needle into the Swadhishtana Chakra. This is a highly professional technique by which the life energy contained in the Swadhishtana Chakra is released, resulting in instantaneous and painless death. The process was known as harakiri. Have you heard of it? We all live in constant fear of death. We are ready to escape it at all cost. Death is seen upon us as our greatest enemy. A small story about Socrates. Socrates was killed by being forced to drink a poisonous juice. Just before he drank the poison, one of his disciples asked him, "Master, are you not afraid of dying? You appear to be so calm." To that Socrates replied, "Why should I be? I know that only two things can happen after death. Either I will continue to exist in some form or name, or I will cease to exist after death. In the former case, there is nothing to worry about. In the latter case, who will remain to worry? So either way, there is nothing to fear." Socrates was fearless of death purely because he had a clear understanding of death and its consequences. Death is always looked upon as a discontinuity, and that is why people suffer when they see death. The basic understanding of death is lacking. Death is never a discontinuity. It is a continuity in some form or the other, or simply liberation, that's all. When man understands this, he will realize how foolish it is to suffer on this account. Man is so attached to the physical form, and that is why he suffers so much. The body is a mere vehicle for the soul. This has to be understood very clearly. The body is a mere vehicle for the soul. Although the only certain thing on planet Earth for man is death, he is always taken up by surprise when it actually happens. This is the most surprising thing about man. A small story. A lady was celebrating her 100th birthday. Her entire family was there for the occasion. They were opening all the gifts and reading all the cards that had been received by family and friends. They showed the lady one card that had been sent to her by her friend who was 94 years old. The lady shrieked, "God, she is alive!" We are able to apply death to everyone else except us. We are all like this. Everything in life we are prepared for except our own death. The irony is, everything in life is so unpredictable except death. The only certain thing in life is death. But the last thing we would like to be told is that sooner or later we are going to die. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, he got his enlightenment through a conscious experience of death. When Ramana was a young boy, one day he was just lying on his bed in his uncle's house in Madurai in India. Suddenly he got the feeling that he was going to die. He felt that death was coming upon him. He had two choices, either to resist the feeling or to accept it and go through it. Usually people resist, so they pass into coma and they leave the body in a state of unconsciousness. 99% of us leave the body in a state of unconsciousness. Though we know from the moment of birth that our life will culminate in death, we never try to visualize it. We never try to actualize the possibility, never try to welcome it. At least once, if you go through it with consciousness, you will lose your fear for it automatically. Ramana was courageous enough to choose the second path. He just cooperated with the feeling. He allowed death to happen. He decided to see what would happen during death. He saw clearly one by one the parts of his body dying. Slowly his whole body was dead. He saw his body turn into ashes. Suddenly he realized that something remained even after that, something which cannot be destroyed. It hit him that he was pure consciousness at that time, beyond the body and beyond the mind. He was simply a witness to the whole thing. That knowledge was tremendous, and it never left him when he came back into his body. When he came back into his body, he was Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, an enlightened master. When you conquer the fear of death, you conquer death itself, because death is just one more imagination. Just as in the Mooladhara Chakra, our greed makes us imagine the world to be more beautiful than it actually is. Here our fear makes us imagine death to be more frightening than it actually is. We wear glasses of greed and fear which don't allow us to see reality. When you experience death psychologically, you release the energy that has been locked in the Swadhishtana. You release the energy that is locked due to the fear of death. When the Swadhishtana opens, the whole quality of life changes. Because of your capacity to accept death as just a continuity in another form, your capacity to enjoy life is transformed. Your whole body relaxes. Your consciousness increases. Your living capacity expands. Whether you accept it or not, every moment of your life, the fear of death lingers in the subconscious mind. By understanding death and fear of death, your life will turn out to be rich. Not wealthy maybe, but rich. Richness is what is really important in life. But if I tell you all this now, you will not believe me. You will think that I am talking about impractical things. A small story. A man who had been born blind was promised a cure by a doctor. The doctor assured the man, "After this operation, you'll be able to see. You won't need to use your stick anymore." Hearing this, the blind man became afraid. He said, "Doctor, I understand that I will be able to see, but how can I possibly walk without my stick?" The stick had become an integral part of the blind man, that he could not even relate to the fact that he can walk without the stick once he gets his vision. How can you explain to a blind man that once he gains his vision, he simply won't need the stick? Right now, he too is afraid. So all you can do is perform the operation and let him see for himself, that's all. He will throw away the stick on his own. In the same way, even if I tell you all your fears are only the ultimate fear of death, your self is immortal, it is only your body which perishes, and what not. If I tell you all these things, you will still hold on to your own ideas of fear out of sheer fear because you haven't experienced it. Unless death becomes a conscious experience, the fear will never leave you. But you can do one thing. Repeatedly listen to these words. Develop a conviction about them. Try to see how your minor and major fears are actually related to the fear of dying. Bring some clarity into your day-to-day fears. See how interrelated all your fears are. Bring awareness into your fears. Then you will steadily evolve and come closer to the truth. We can categorize all our fears into 5 major categories. The first is the fear of losing our wealth, our comfort, name, fame, prestige, all the outer world things. The second is the fear of losing our health, parts of our body, maybe through some accident or disease. The fears that are connected with our physical health. The third fear is the fear of losing our mental health or our mental stability. The fourth is the fear of losing our loved ones or losing their love. The fifth, the fear of the unknown, fear of God, fear of ghosts, and the fear of death itself. Actually, if you deeply analyze our fears, all the 5 categories of fear are fear of death only. They just manifest themselves in different ways, that's all. The main reason why people fear death is they have not lived their lives totally. They are afraid because they feel desperate that they have not lived life enough. They feel this way because throughout their lives they have lived in memories of the past, in the anxieties of the future, for the sake of others, never in the present. Every action of ours has been due to the pull and push of each other's ego, each other's desires, each other's emotions. If you deeply analyze your own life, you will understand what I am trying to say. You start your life where your parents left off. You simply take over the crown of desires, the guilt, fear, all this that was passed down for generations. And then you live your life and pass it down to the next generation before leaving. You have never lived totally. Now, what do I mean by living totally? Try to live with more clarity, that's all. Make the other people see sense in whatever they try to impose upon you. With clarity, you will be able to clearly identify what your own desires are, what others have imposed on you, and what desires you have borrowed from others. The first set of desires alone need to be fulfilled without any harm to any person or property. That is fine. The other two need to be dropped with the help of clarity. If you live this way, you will no more be fulfilling others' desires, and you will no more be living others' lives. You will live your own life and experience fulfillment, and you will be ready to die when the time comes. You will have no lurking confusion and fear of death. See, I am not asking you to be selfish. I am only asking you to bring clarity into the whole thing. A small story. Once a Zen monk was ordered by the king to be put to death. He was supposed to be killed the next day. The monk remained calm and silent. One of his disciples was shocked by the monk's calmness. He asked him, "Do you realize you have only 24 hours to live? Are you not afraid?" The monk replied calmly, "I have lived, therefore I have no fear of dying." He means, I have lived every moment of my life, moment to moment. Every single moment has been so much for me. Why should I be afraid? If you look deep inside, you'll realize that most of us are not afraid of dying, but we are afraid that we haven't lived our lives enough. We are afraid that we have lived a pseudo-life. We feel a kind of deep, unexplainable regret about the whole thing. We feel we have not lived as we wanted to live. We don't feel fulfilled, and there starts the fear of death. Continuously compromising for the sake of others, trying to live out a life that is not natural to us, trying to fit into a mold that society has prepared for us. All these things lead to a lack of fulfillment. The fear of life is what is reflected in the fear of death. When you have lived in the deepest possible way, to your full satisfaction, you will not be in fear of death. I tell you, live without fear. Live with the deepest individuality that you can manage. Live to your complete satisfaction. You will lose your fear of death. And one more thing. If you live totally, without any hangover of any feelings, when you live your emotions with great clarity and totality, you will never fear losing your family and relatives. You see, you fear someone's loss only because you feel you have not justified that relationship in some way in your life. You feel you have not been in it totally. You are not ready to let go. Physical separation is only one aspect of the fear. The real reason is lack of fulfillment in the relationship. The word justification comes into relationships because you have always been taught to live for the sake of others, fulfilling their needs and desires. You always feel the need to justify relationships by doing these things. And if you don't do these things, you get into the cycle of guilt and fear. If you just live totally with deep clarity of the whole play of society, you will never be gripped by such compulsions. You can live with total fulfillment and still not lose out on any love in relationships. We have discussed this while talking about the Anahata Chakra. The fear of physical separation is always because of a feeling of guilt with respect to that relationship. If you live totally, not with a transaction type of relationship, but with just pure loving energy towards the other, there will be no room for guilt or fear. Even if the person passes away, you will continue to feel love towards him or her. That's all. Never fear of any separation. Even when you are living with the person, try to live with more clarity and awareness. Most often, relationships suffer because of insecurity and the lingering fear of losing one another. If you deeply analyze fear in any relationship, you'll understand that because our relationships are just transactions of some sort, this fear is there. Between a husband and wife, there is fear that the other may start looking outside of marriage. Between mother and son, there is the fear that the son may start paying more attention to his wife instead of the mother. Between the father and son, there is the fear that the father may not pass on the inheritance to his son, or the son may not keep up the family prestige. Like this, in any relationship, there is a core expectation which needs to be satisfied and guarded, and this gives rise to fear. I tell you, you can never satisfy any relationship totally. Anyone who has tried to please their whole family will only become dropouts. If a relationship is based on pure love, with no underlying purpose, the kind of love that we talked during the Anahata Chakra, there will be no fear element at all. You don't know what liberation it is when you can move from fear to love. Fear is always imprisoning. Love is always liberating. But unless society instills fear into you, you will not listen to it. And so it instills fear in you through all possible means. Through insecurity, through rules, regulations, through worship and whatnot. Society tries to make saints out of you. Saints who fear existence and everything all the time. I am not here to make saints out of you. I am here to make you blissful. When you are blissful, you will be full of life, alive and alert. Anyhow, fear is what takes the form of jealousy also in our relationships. Fear is the underlying emotion for most of our actions and emotions. Jealousy, anger, greed, all these emotions are rooted in fear. But we are not aware of this. We don't know that fear is the causative factor for all these. That is the problem. That is why we continue to be in the dark as far as the behavioral patterns are concerned. That is why relationships turn out to be traumatic. Understand, fear and love can never coexist. If there is pure love in a relationship, there can never be fear. If there is fear, there can never be pure love. Be very clear. There is some vested interest in the relationship. There is some purpose, some objective, some expectation of security or greed or returns in the relationship. That is why fear sets in. We look for security in every relationship. We need some security to settle down with comfortably. This is actually a kind of imprisonment that we enjoy. People talk of freedom, but I tell you, they are so afraid of it. They like only imprisonment. In the comfortable cushioning effect of imprisonment, they think they are free. A small story. A small girl asked her father one day, "Dad, what is the meaning of the word guaranteed?" So the father replied, It means that something is made well and it will last for a long time. That night before going to sleep, the girl called out to her father, "Good night, guaranteed, father." So all of us look for security continuously in our lives. But we say that we are looking for freedom. If we are really looking for freedom, why are we looking for security? Why fear? As long as you have fear in you, you will look for security. Till then, you can only delude yourself by saying that you want freedom. A master is one who will throw you upon the utter insecurity of life. He is the only one who gives you complete freedom. That is why with him you feel insecure, you feel afraid. Freedom creates fear. You will never feel utterly insecure in your other relationships because there is always some push or pull of greed, of fear, of anger, and that keeps you well settled in the familiar patterns of relationships. But with the master, you are totally free, so you become afraid. A small story. A man was in prison for 20 years. On the day of his release, he appeared very worried and tense. His friend in the prison asked him, "What has happened to you? Why are you so worried?" The man replied, "I am afraid. What will I do when I go out?" The prison has created such a solid pattern of security for the man that he does not know what he will do when he goes out. This is the danger of getting caught in patterns and security. A master will never offer you the security you are looking for. He will never offer you the patterns you are looking for. When you don't get the security you are looking for, you will grow with deep centering within yourself. You will grow fearlessly because you know there is nothing to lose. And when you know there is nothing to lose, you have no fear. To show you that there is nothing to lose, the master throws you upon utter insecurity. Out of a deep compassion for you, out of deep concern for your growth, he doesn't offer you security. When you don't find the mundane security, you will find God. You will find existence. All your fears are because you don't clearly know that there is nothing to lose. Just one encounter with near death can show you that there is nothing to lose and that all your fears are baseless. The Master simply makes you understand this in his own way. So don't try to escape from the Master. Understand that he is here only to show you what you actually are. Your inherent nature is fearlessness. Over years, you have been instilled with fear. The Master tries to break the layers of conditioning that you have taken upon yourself over years. That's all. If you just allow him to work upon you with trust and love, you will see yourself transform in front of your own eyes. Let me tell you a small story about a Swami whom I was acquainted with. The Swami used to have a number of clocks in his room, and each of the clocks would show a different time. I asked him about it one day. He replied, "Time is not my master. I am the master. Whatever time I want it to be, I simply choose the time from that particular clock." The Swami had already predicted that he would be leaving his body on a particular day and time. On the night before his death, the Swami asked all his disciples to gather around him and sing hymns. One of the singers was somewhat arrogant about his musical abilities. He never sang on this occasion. As was the custom, the Swami wrote something on a piece of paper and passed it on to him. The disciple was flattered, thinking it was a request for a particular song. But when he opened the note, he saw that the Swami had written, "Please don't sing after my death." Even on his deathbed, he was in a humorous mood. Later that night, he instructed his disciples to take good care of the orphans who lived in the ashram. He said, "Especially tomorrow, you will all be busy with preparations for my cremation. Don't forget to arrange for food for those children." Till the last minute, his concern was for the people he was leaving behind. The next morning, exactly at the time he had mentioned, he joined his hands in a namaskar to all, and his hands dropped, simply like a drama. What a beautiful, calm and courageous way to face death. That is the way we should all go to death, and that is the way we should look upon death even when our own family and relatives pass away. When you understand this, your whole idea of fear will slowly dissolve, because as I said, the underlying basis of fear is death itself. Yes, do you have any questions? But Swamiji, fear is normally associated more with women, isn't it? You see, men are mainly caught in the Mooladhara Chakra, and women are mainly caught in the Swadhishtana Chakra. That is why men are more lustful and women are more fearing. The fact is, they both know this and they exploit each other appropriately. The man knows where exactly to touch the woman's weak chord. He will play with her insecurity and fear and exploit her. Similarly, the woman knows where the key lies with the man. She will play the game appropriately and exploit him. This is what goes on all the time in marriages. Actually, at the time of Hindu marriages, a vow is taken wherein the man and woman vow to each other that they will both work towards exhausting each other's karmas, unfulfilled actions and desires, in a smooth way, without accumulating any more karmas in this life. But these days, people are not even aware that they have taken such a vow, because they are not the ones who are getting married. The priests are the ones who are doing all the chants and get married. It is such a beautiful vow that they take. You see, we have accumulated enough and more karmas in our lives. The main concern for us should be to exhaust them at least in this birth and attain liberation. But what do? We exploit each other and play a cunning and vengeful game. We add to each other's karmas and get further caught in the cycle of life and death. Still worse, we blame each other for it. If you watch the drama of marriage from outside, you will understand how each one creates karmas for themselves and end up blaming the whole world for it. Only when you watch from outside, you will understand what a foolish game is being played. I always tell people, for actors and actresses, it would be so easy to watch life as a game because they are all the time assuming roles and enacting them. They are the closest to seeing life as a great drama. The rest of us are so caught up with our roles that it becomes a solid reality for us. Women are more fearful because they are psychologically built that way. Man and woman are not only physiologically different, but psychologically different as well. Swamiji, how do we overcome fear for small things? First of all, understand that all small fears are mere projections of the ultimate fear of death. Second, don't resist the fear in you. Just keep repeating to yourself that you are scared and go through it, that's all. You will soon find that the fear is no longer there because you saw it through. Start doing this every time you feel fear. When you consciously work on this, you will understand what you call fear is nothing but your response or reaction to an incident or a thought. Depending on how you respond, you can claim that you did not have fear or had fear. And with more and more awareness, you can respond towards fear without fear. Remember one thing, no one can claim to be fearless. One can learn to handle fear without fear, that's all. If anyone professes to be fearless, be very clear that they have not analyzed deeply the subject of fear and the human response to it. Don't start thinking that they are superhumans and you are a lesser mortal. Yes, you want to ask something? Swamiji, I remember how you made me overcome my fear for spiders. Yes, tell them how, Ma. While in our discussions one day, I jumped up when I saw a spider and you laughed at me for it. You told me to meditate on the spider every time I saw one. I followed this meticulously, and every time I saw a spider, I looked at it with awareness and concentration. Slowly I started wondering why I was scared of it after all. Yes. Did you all hear that? It is only a question of bringing awareness into our fears. You will then wonder what it was that caused the fear in you. Swamiji, I remember when we were all standing around you in the Ganges, in the Himalayas, there was a small water snake that came up to where we were. While I squealed and I scrambled in the water, Anupama was calmly looking at it even while it brushed past her. You then scolded me for not bringing in awareness at that moment, that too in your presence. Yes, now you are able to connect to what I mean when I say awareness. The only way to get out of these fears is to visualize them and go through them as a reality with the power of your visualization. You can even sit by yourself and imagine that your fears are happening to you. In your imagination, confront them with deep awareness and calmness. If you suffer in the process of visualization, it is all right. Don't suppress it or punish it. If your body shakes with fear, just let it. Just cooperate with your intelligence and allow yourself to flow with it. Anything, when lived out completely, will have no effect over you. All your fears are simply fear of your fears, that's all. A small story. A disciple was caught in a river one day. He was terrified of losing his life and he shouted out to his master to save him from drowning. The master said, "Stand up." The disciple screamed out, "How can I? I am drowning." The master said, "Have I not taught you to help yourself? Now stand up." The disciple said, "Master, you are preaching to me at this moment of my death. Why don't you just save me?" The master persisted. "I said stand up." The disciple was enraged at the master's persistence. He simply stood up. The water came up only to his knee. I tell you, all your fears are nothing but the fear of your fears. If you shake off your fears and allow your intelligence to surface, you will find that your fears are just shadows of objects that don't exist. If you deeply analyze the fear of death, you will come to know that people are afraid to die because unconsciously they feel that they should have been somewhere higher up than where they are right now. They feel they have not reached their actual place in life, and so they are not ready to leave. Some people feel that others have cast eyes on them, and so they are not able to progress. The truth is, you have not cast your own eyes properly on yourself. That is why, even in your last days, you prolong your death. If you properly analyze and understand your desires, your fear and your other emotions, you will never blame anyone for anything. People who live their lives without any of these convoluted fears will be able to live their death also. As I told you earlier, there are so many stories of living masters who told their disciples exactly what time of the day they would die, and they died that way. So many of their disciples have learned from their master's death what they failed to learn from their teachings when they were alive. When we mean that they lived their death, we mean they were able to announce that they were going to die, and they died consciously. In their case, their death is literally leaving their body. That's all. We all leave our bodies unconsciously with a lot of suffering. The pull and push of unfulfilled desires torture us on one side, and the body tortures on the other, saying that it has had enough. The mismatch between the mind and the body tortures us while we are alive, and at the time of death also this happens. When we are alive, if we live inside our boundary, inside our body, we will also leave our body peacefully. But the problem is, when we live, we always live outside our body, never inside. Let me explain this to you. Just look deeply into the way of your life. Early in the morning when you brush your teeth, what are you doing? You are already thinking of going to work. When you are at work, you are thinking of catching the bus to go home. When you are at home, you are thinking of work the next day. When you are on vacation, you think of your office. And when you are at office, you think of going on vacation. Wherever your body is, you can be sure that your mind is not. You have never lived any moment of your life with fullness. You have always lived either in the past or in the future. That is what is called not living inside your boundary. This is why, at the time of death, you feel so preoccupied and unfulfilled, you are unwilling to let go. This is why you fear death. You may ask why you need to know about dying consciously. Let me tell you, only when you know about death can you live with the right understanding of life. Else, you will not live life the right way. In life, you keep postponing everything. You postpone your enjoyment. You postpone your work. You postpone everything for tomorrow. You have to understand that tomorrow also comes in the form of today only. When it comes as today, you say tomorrow again. It is just a game that you are playing with yourself. And finally, when death comes, you are so unprepared. You feel there is so much to be done. You feel cheated by life itself. The truth is, you have been deceiving yourself all along. But you'll end up blaming life for everything. That is why a clear understanding of death is necessary for you to live. Then there will be no delusions, and you will be ready to die when the time comes. Procrastination is the mentality by which we lose out on many things in life. People ask me, Swamiji, how are you able to do so many things in such a short period of time? It is amazing for them to see my calendar for the year. They are amazed to see the various things happening throughout the year across the world. I tell them, it is very simple. I live totally in the present. I don't procrastinate like you. Your tendency to put off things simply makes you feel like a loser. Even though you feel like a loser, you don't make any effort not to procrastinate. In our meditation programs, we take people through a guided meditation. In that, they are told to visualize that they are going to die in just 24 hours' time, and that they should complete all the things that they would like to complete before they die. It is a beautiful meditation technique. They are also made to visualize their own death ceremony. Once after this meditation, a young girl shared her thoughts with the group. She said, Swamiji, I saw a poster in a shop which said, when you plan concretely, taking into account the future years to come. And when you execute like you're going to die the very next minute. After doing this meditation, Swamiji, I understand what it really means. I said, beautiful. You see, when you plan, you have to have a futuristic plan so that too many things don't have to be restructured for at least a few years. But when you execute, you have to execute in such a way that every subtask that you take up in the master plan is completed successfully without any loose ends. Even if you are going to die then, up to the point of what has been executed, everything will be perfect and the master plan will still be there as a reference for people to follow or to amend as the situation demands. Now this can be achieved only if you work without procrastination in every subtask that you take up. Often, procrastination is what takes you to poverty. Poverty is your own choice. When you defer decisions, you take your steps towards being poor. But you are blissfully unaware of this. You feel you have not been treated right by God and that life has been too short for you to realize your dreams. If you had used all your energy in the proper channel and with clarity, you will not feel this way and you will be ever ready to die. If you just look at the mirror every day and tell yourself that today is going to be the last day of your life, you will stop procrastinating. You need not tell yourself this all your life. Just a month will do. Automatically you will start living your life without procrastination. Not only that, your fears about losing your prestige, embarrassment, pride, expectations, all this will dissolve because you will know that you have nothing to lose. People who have had a near-death experience in some way, like a narrow escape from an accident, or a cure from cancer, or something like that, they will be able to live more fearlessly because they will know that they have nothing to lose. They will also live their lives with greater clarity and with more intelligence. The first lesson that you need to learn from all your education is that you should do the right thing at the right time and move on. Somehow this is the last lesson that we learn thoroughly. After having gone through all the other lessons, we learn this lesson: to do the right thing at the right time and to move on. Procrastination is something that you bring about yourself, but the rest of the fears society instills in you. Society makes you afraid of your own self, of others, and of God. It makes you afraid of yourself with simple things like morality, names and forms, prestige, and whatnot. In the name of morality, it makes you lose confidence in yourself, and that is why you're so unsure of yourself when it comes to morality. When you start following morality out of fear, there will be no chance for your inner intelligence to guide you. When people see me traveling with women, they ask me, Swamiji, how can you, being a spiritual head, travel with women? Will people not talk about you? First of all, they are forgetting that they are talking to an enlightened master. If they are completely aware whom they are talking to, they will not even come up with the question. Anyhow, I have to answer them in their language, and so I tell them, I have faith in myself and the women have faith in me. Why are you bothered? They are simply shocked when I say this. In our lives, morality is nothing but a pure substitute for a lack of intelligence. When you act out of your own intelligence, you can be confident of yourself. But when you act out of rules and regulations, you can be never sure of yourself. Because you are not yourself to start with. You are not centered in yourself. You are centered on the rules. If you live out of intelligence, these types of fears will never grip you. People who preach morality are so deeply in fear. That is why they preach about it. They are afraid either because they are unsure of themselves or because they know to be moral only with fear. Moralists can become neurotic with their concept of morality and discipline. A small story. Once there was a moralist who normally walked on the streets with carefully measured steps. One day it suddenly started raining very heavily. The moralist just followed the crowd and ran along. After a while, he realized that he was careless about the way he walked. He said to himself, "What am I doing? Running is undignified. A gentleman must correct his mistakes regretfully if he has made any." So he returned in the rain to the place where he had begun running and walked again with measured steps. What foolishness! Morality makes you totally dull and dead. Understand one thing. When I tell you this, I'm not telling you that this is a free world and that you can do anything you like. I'm telling you that you have to develop your own intelligence and live so that rules will only be a confirmation of what you already know and feel. This is real intelligence. Any proper rule will only be a confirmation of what the rightly flowered intelligence feels. So drop your fears and try to find your inner intelligence, your inner voice, your inner master. A small story. A young sannyasi lived across the road from a beautiful courtesan. The sannyasi was all the time trying to meditate. The courtesan, on the other hand, carried on her way of earning money. Many men came and went from her house. The sannyasi used to try his best to concentrate on his meditation, but his attention was more on the young woman, and he kept cursing her for the kind of immoral life that she was leading. The courtesan, on the other hand, was not even aware of the sannyasi staying across the street. Despite her lifestyle of offering pleasure to men, the courtesan was immersed in her love for Lord Krishna, and she spent as much time as she could in praying to him and playing with his image. The sannyasi and the courtesan died on the same day. They reached the gates of Lord Yama, the Lord of Death. After their records were analyzed, the courtesan was sent to heaven while the sannyasi was sent to hell. The sannyasi expressed deep feelings about the unfairness about the justice of Yama. Yama calmly explained to the sannyasi, "All your life, under the guise of meditating, you were harboring lust for the courtesan, while she, on the other hand, despite whatever she was doing, she was totally focused on God." Moralists live a superficial, fearing and shallow life. They don't live totally. They are in constant fear of stepping out of morality. Their true intentions are kept well covered under the guise of morality. That is the problem when you simply operate out of moral codes instead of your inner intelligence. When you operate from your intelligence, there will be a certain purity in you. When you operate simply from the periphery, from moral codes, there will be no beauty or purity in you. Those who are afraid and unsure of themselves, they set up moral codes and follow them. Those who are intelligent just act spontaneously and do the right things with a deep centering and no fear, that's all. Like morality, prestige also gives rise to fear. Prestige, name, fame, social status, all these give rise to fear. These fears are nothing but the fears of your ego. What prestige are you trying to cover? Just live with inner fulfillment and dignity. That is enough. The people who guard their prestige are the greatest hypocrites on planet Earth. They are also the people who live in constant fear. Their so-called prestige is so much in control of them. One man was fishing in the river one day. He was sitting for a long time without being able to catch any fish. He dozed off with the fishing rod in his hand. Suddenly, a heavy fish caught the bait and tugged at it. The man just tumbled into the water before he could wake up. A boy was watching this from a distance, and he asked his father, "Dad, was he catching the fish or was the fish catching him?" So you see, when prestige becomes larger than life for you, it starts consuming you. You are no more in search of it. It simply consumes you, that's all. And why are you afraid of losing your prestige? Because your prestige makes you feel that you are extraordinary. Your prestige gives you a solid identity in society. People with money and prestige do all sorts of nonsensical things and immoral things, and they get away with it. People talk about them behind their backs and then greet them on their faces because of their power and prestige. This is the kind of prestige they are trying to guard so carefully. Let me tell you one thing. Existence will never choose you if you are like this. In the material world, you may get what you want. You may appear successful, but in the eyes of existence, you will remain poor. Existence has its own ways of choosing. Understand that prestige, name, fame, power, these are all your own imagination. You give life to them. You create them and develop a fear about losing them. Just live with infinite love for everyone and everything around you. Feel deep love for anyone and anything that comes your way. If you live this way, automatically prestige will come to you. People will respect you for your quality and not for your quantity. And with this kind of prestige, there is no fear of losing it, and you don't have to guard it all the time. You are simply liberated from such fears. Even things like fear of public speaking, etc., are fear of losing one's prestige in a way. When you are afraid of talking in front of a gathering, you are actually afraid of what they might say about you. You are afraid that your ego might suffer because of something that they might say about you. This is a massive form of guarding your ego. Fear is very much a manifestation of ego. Understand that. So what if people don't approve of your talk? You talk with a sense of totality. That is enough. Just enjoy yourself and do it. Don't bother about what others will say about it. The moment you are afraid of what others will say, you are guarding your ego. Fear of your ego suffering is also the reason why people get afraid when they go into meditation. When you go into meditation, there is always the fear of losing yourself to existence, to the existential energy that is surrounding you. So you hold on. You resist meditation. Instead, if I tell you to chant something, you will happily chant. There will be no fear at all. Your ego is so afraid that it will dissolve. If it dissolves, all the labels with which you identify yourself will also dissolve. And this is too much for your ego. You become a nobody. So you resist and you remain somebody, at least to yourself. This resistance is purely the fear of your ego. You're so scared of becoming vulnerable, of becoming porous. Fear is also the reason why people talk so much in social circles. If you just observe people, they will feel so compelled to say something from their side. They will feel that they have to say something or else others will take them to be inadequate. So they say something, even though it doesn't make any sense. All these are subtle manifestations of fear that are difficult for you to perceive. Swamiji, you spoke about fear of the unknown. Can you explain further on that, Swamiji? Yes, I am coming to that. You see, fear of the unknown is nothing but the fear that we have of darkness, of ghosts, of spirits, of God, and finally of our own death. Actually, we are so afraid of our fears, and that is the truth. We are afraid to face our fears, and so we allow our fears to consume great proportions, and we start getting more and more afraid. A small story. A man was once traveling in a train. The ticket collector came to him and asked for his ticket. He frantically started searching for the ticket in his purse. He searched in his luggage, he searched in his pant pockets and what not. The ticket collector was watching him and said, "Sir, why don't you search in your coat pocket?" The man replied, "Please don't ask me to look in it now. My only hope is that it will be there." We are so afraid to look. We are so afraid to look at our fears. That is the whole problem. So we delude ourselves in comfort zones and keep carrying on. Never fear to look. I tell you, never fear to look. The moment you fear to look, you are only creating more fear because it becomes more unknown to you. Just look into the fear and accept that you are in fear. Automatically the fear will dissolve. If you start facing your fears one after another with awareness, somewhere down the line, intelligence will replace fear, and you will have lesser and lesser of the fear emotion in you. When we talk about fear of the unknown, fear of spirits and fear of ghosts is very common. There is no need to fear them at all. Just understand that spirits and ghosts are much less powerful than us. We give them much more power than what they have and make them control our fears. And there starts the problem. Don't go too much into the subject of spirits and ghosts. It is of no use. If you are well centered and clear about yourself, it is enough. Automatically nothing can touch you, and you will also not have fear of such things. Fear of darkness is also fear of the unknown. Fear of darkness is nothing but the fear of death. Just think, the same garden in your house which you walk in at daytime, will you walk in the garden at night time, in the same garden? No, you are afraid. Why? After all, you know the boundaries of your garden well, is it not? Then why are you afraid? You are afraid not because of your garden, but because of the darkness. You are afraid that something might happen to you in the dark. You are afraid of your very life. This is what I mean when I say that every fear of yours is in some way related to the ultimate fear of death. In the case of darkness, it is very obvious. But in the case of your other fears, it is very subtle, that's all. Actually, darkness is so beautiful. It is like your own mother's womb. When you were in your mother's womb, you were in complete darkness. But after you came to the world, you have lost this connection with darkness. You start fearing it as something unknown. Tantric followers meditate upon darkness to feel the intensity of existence. There is no need to be afraid of darkness. Just once, if you can look into darkness with deep love, with the soothing feeling that it is your mother's womb, you will not fear it anymore. When a child gets scared of darkness, don't tell him, "Be brave." If you tell him this, he will only become tense because he is not supposed to get afraid. He will not drop his fear for darkness. Just allow him to go through the fear of darkness. Let him tremble a little. At least he gets a chance to explore his fear. When he does this a few times, he will lose his fear of the darkness. Now coming to the fear of God. God is also unknown to us, and so we fear God. Understand, God is nothing but the name that we give to existence, to cosmos, to the existential energy, to the life force that pervades this universe. This existence, this universal energy knows only to love. If you can understand this much, automatically all your fears will drop. People ask me, Swamiji, people say that if we do good deeds or punya, instead of doing bad deeds or papa, we will go to heaven and not to hell. Is this true? First of all, understand that hell and heaven are not geographic. There is no heaven or hell located above your head. They are terms created just to instill fear and greed in man. Hell or heaven can be interpreted as having either a tumultuous death or having a peaceful and conscious death. Any moment in your life that you have spent in meditation is a moment of punya or good deed. When I say meditation, I don't mean closing your eyes and sitting. I mean moments that you have been consciously in the present. When your consciousness has been with you. Moments when you come out of your normally subconscious state and are in the present. Moments when you have felt and resonated with the existential energy. Any moment that has not been spent in such states is papa. All the moments of conscious states are like your bank balance. At the time of your death, it is these states that will surface and liberate you. People think that if they offer pots of milk to the deity at the temple, their punya will increase and that they will reach heaven. Let me tell you, by offering milk to the Lord, nothing is going to happen. When you feel a swelling gratitude towards existence, you can express it by offering milk to the deity that you worship as existence. That is perfectly all right. But please do not link it with punya and papa and all that. Even a drop of milk offered with pure joy and gratitude is a moment of sincere meditation. This moment will stand by you at the time of death. On the other hand, pots and pots of milk offered out of sheer fear of missing out on gathering punya will not get any returns. So please increase your awareness and live consciously. Make every moment, whatever may be the thing you are doing, make it a meditation. That is enough. You can live without fear of sins. The fear of sins will leave you completely. Let me narrate to you one incident. I went to a Shiva temple in a remote village in India. At the entrance of the main deity, there was a tube light burning. The light was hardly visible because something was written on it in black ink. Vishnunathan BSc. I was wondering how Lord Shiva was called Vishnunathan. Then under that, I saw in small font, KAILASA, which is a correct name for Shiva. Now Vishnunathan was the name of the person who donated the tube light. We are so fearful of missing out on collecting good deeds in our lives that we become materialistic and start creating bank balances of good deeds for ourselves. And we don't stop at that. We inform God repeatedly about all the good things that we have done so that He doesn't forget. We become so materialistic even when it comes to matters concerning God. Understand, God is not running a resort in heaven wherein you can get an entry by doing the so-called good things on earth. When you live, you're always trying to do these kind of material things with no idea or feeling of the truth behind them. With these things, you build a big castle called punya. Then you expect that castle to stand by you at the time of death. It is something like this. You build a house in your dream. You paint it, decorate it, and you enjoy it. What happens when you wake up from your dream? Where is the house? Is it of any use to you after you wake up? No. In the same way, You're only deluding yourself by this punya concept. We reduce everything, including the divine, to simple trade, that's all. I have seen people, they will decide to visit a particular deity in a particular temple with an offering, maybe every Saturday of the week. If they are not able to make it on a particular Saturday, they will send their driver with the offering to the deity. Be very clear, the material world will not come with you when you are dying. Only moments of awareness, consciousness, and meditation will come with you. And understand one more thing. God knows all about you better than you know about yourself. You cannot hide anything from Him because He knows. So there is no reason to fear Him and please Him. If God cannot understand you, then there is no understanding in the whole world. Even better than your father or mother, God knows you. He knows you not only in this birth, but in all the lives that you have taken birth till now. So there is nothing to be afraid of. You are an open book in front of Him. He can refer to any page at any time. So just drop your fear of God and look upon Him as a totality of existence. Look upon Him as a friend. However hard society tries to make you afraid of God, don't listen to it. Develop your own relationship with God, a solid and trusting one, the only relationship that is required in one's life. When you start relating with existence or God, you start relating with yourself much better than before. You will know what exactly is going on inside you. Clarity will step in. Your inner intelligence will grow. Your fears will drop. You will learn to look properly into anything before feeling fear of it. You will not feel any compulsion to do anything because intelligence will replace fear. You will be more relaxed and joyful. You will feel liberated. When you understand this about existence, all the wars that go on in the name of religion will not be there. The people who are in the fear of their religion, the people who fight for their religion, are people who have not understood clearly the loving existence. They are just continuously missing the whole thing. They are like blind people fighting with one another. And most important, please don't pass on your ideas about God to your children and don't instill fear of God in them. Teach them to embrace God. Teach them that God is the all-pervading existence that is all-embracing. Teach them that God is pure love and nothing else. Help them to grow with a loving attitude towards God and existence as a whole. This way, they will not grow up with much of the fears that they will normally grow up with. Swamiji, we often wonder, whatever is happening to us, is it fate or is it our choice? A very commonly asked question. See, just understand this. Your present moment is the totality of all your past decisions. Now you are here in this place. You decided to wake up early in the morning, take the proper route, come here, sit and continue to sit. Am I right? Like this, all your past decisions form your present, like being here right now. And just like this, your future is going to be a result of all your present decisions. Now, why do you think it is fate? It is because we make our decisions unconsciously and don't expect some of the results that come our way. When unexpected or unfavorable results happen, we call it fate. When we take conscious decisions, we will be aware of the side effects and after effects. When we are not aware of the side effects and after effects, we call it fate. Actually, life is your pure choice. It is we who take the decisions. It is we who make the decisions. Never somebody else for us. God is so gracious. Even though the whole world is His, He allows us to have our choice. The only way you can make the right decisions is by infusing awareness into your every breath, so that every action of yours, every decision of yours happens with awareness, and you never slip into any subconscious or unconscious decision making. Then you don't have to worry about fate or destiny. And understand one more thing. No one is waiting to lay their hands on your wealth and cause you so-called ill fate. Somehow, we live with a constant fear that people are waiting to rob us of our wealth. This is the fear of losing our wealth. In this fear, we build many walls around us. Finally, we find ourselves trapped in our own cell. That is why I say, open the door, let the breeze in. Have faith that the life force will take care of you. I am not saying don't lock your houses. Of course, you need to lock your houses at the physical level. I am saying that at the mental level, drop the obsession with the lock, that's all. Just take, for example, you're traveling in a train. As soon as you settle down in your compartment, what do? You start conversing with the person next to you. You ask them where they are from. You try to make out what religion they might be. You ask questions about their background, etc. Why? Is it because you are genuinely interested in their details? No. It is because you see them as unknown, and if you know all these things about them, psychologically your fear of the unknown reduces. You will be at ease, that's all. If you are a Hindu and they are also Hindu, you feel relaxed. If you are Hindu and you find that they are Muslim, you start feeling uneasy and afraid. You start eyeing them suspiciously. You might even think about changing your seat. Is it not? This is how fear works. You're always unconsciously in fear of losing your property. Sharda Devi says, trust others even if you are exploited. The very quality of trusting the universe in your being will make you live like God on earth. When intellect sharpens, you will be able to understand like a scientist. When emotions sharpen, trust flowers. When feelings sharpen, enlightenment flowers. So drop your fears and allow understanding and trust to happen in you. Drop your fears about your property. Understand one thing. Everything belongs to existence. You are only a temporary possessor of it all, that's all. If you can understand this at a deep level, you will not allow yourself to be consumed by the fear of your property. We spoke of fear of strangers in the context of property. But take the case of how fear works in the case of prestige. Suppose someone wants to do certain things that society will not approve of. Like say, having an extramarital relationship or just a fling. Then what do? They have their fun with some unknown person who will not in any way identify themselves with them in the eyes of society. In this case, the unknown becomes an ally for the fear. Here, commitment and involvement give rise to fear. And so you look to lesser known people where commitment and involvement can be minimized, if not totally avoided. Just see how fear plays. Just see how you are under the clutches of fear all the time. Yes, you have a question? Swamiji, when we have fear, you ask us to be more aware of it and look into it. But sometimes the fear is so sudden. It comes and goes, like a sudden shock. Then we won't have time to look into it. Yes, what you are talking about is called the fear stroke. Fear strokes are short spikes of fear. They just come and go. For example, if you're standing on a road, Suddenly you see a rope and you think it is a snake. You experience a sudden rise of fear which subsides in just a few seconds because by that time you realize it is only a rope. This is a fear stroke. You see, it is like this. There is always a current of fear in us. At times it rises to a peak, that's all. These fear strokes can happen with great intensity, although they are for a short duration of time. Fear strokes weaken the immune system. They release depression-inducing chemicals and they even accelerate our aging process. They can even cause heart attacks. On an average, it is said that everyone has about 6 fear strokes a day, consciously or unconsciously. Conscious fear strokes are to do with things like the telephone ringing well past midnight, or just while in the car a motorist suddenly swerves to your side, or when you're watching a horror movie, someone taps you on your shoulder. So many things like these. You get fear strokes in your dreams also, but you forget them when you wake up. Fear strokes are like shaking the roots of the rose plant. It is very dangerous for the system. As you said, at the time of the fear stroke, you will not have any time to go into awareness. You don't have time to chant any God's name and go through the stroke because it is just a spike. But after the fear stroke, you can very well analyze the stroke and get a deeper imprint of the understanding of your fears. This will help in dissolving the whole idea of fear. The intensity and the frequency of fear strokes can be greatly reduced by reducing the intensity and the depth of the regular fear that is in us. Only from this regular fear the fear strokes arise. If deeper understanding and clarity can reduce the regular fear, the fear strokes will also reduce. Fear in general is so overpowering that it can completely throw you out of control. A small story. A disciple kept bothering a Sufi master to give him initiation. Finally, the master told him that he would initiate him on one condition. He had to go to the nearest town and kiss a woman in burqa and then go to the forest beyond and beat the tiger with a stick. The other disciples protested. They said that it was too simple. The master just smiled and asked them to wait. A week later, the disciple returned. He was terribly wounded and bleeding. The master asked him what had happened. The disciple said, "I don't know why, but I beat the woman and I kissed the tiger." Fear can simply blind you. It can take away your thinking and intelligence altogether for a few moments. That is why you need to deeply understand fear and overcome it. In so many cases you might have heard, when there is a fire or some calamity happening, people will be running in all directions out of fear. They will be opening doors in the wrong direction. They will be running towards the wrong exit, although they know during normal times that it is not the right exit. All these things sometimes even cause them to lose their lives in any emergency situation. Fear is so blinding. I tell you to be aware of your fear all the time, because only through awareness you can transform base energies to higher energies. Just like how lust can change to love through awareness, fear can change to fearlessness and intelligence out of pure awareness. Anything suppressed only takes up another form. It doesn't get uprooted totally. So suppression is not the way to overcome fear. Awareness is the way. In fact, if you suppress fear, you are missing a chance of overcoming it. When you continuously look into your fears with awareness, even when death comes, you will look into it with awareness and allow it to happen to you. It is important to be able to do this because ultimately, all your fears are nothing but the fear of death. When you work on your day-to-day fears, your fear of death decreases unconsciously. And when your fear of death decreases, your day-to-day fears decrease. It is time now for us to enter into the meditation for the Swadhishtana Chakra. We will now do a beautiful meditation called the Darkness Meditation. We will work directly upon the Swadhishtana Chakra. Please listen carefully to the instructions.